While the coronavirus mandated self-quarantine efforts keep us apart, I get the feeling that we're also pulling together as a community. For one thing, the health crisis has effectively stalled the rancor and the partisanship of the presidential campaign, so that relentlessly divisive American political polarization has taken a back seat in the daily news cycle. I mean, that in itself may help us pull together. After all, it's been said so often, we're all in this thing together. I appreciate the everyday faith column that Julie Riddle, a reporter for the Alpena News, wife of a Rogers City pastor, she wrote for the Easter edition 2 weeks ago. I'd like to share her words with you this morning before we get into the details of looking for God's will in the midst of suffering. Julie Riddle wrote, and I quote now from her, "A virus has taken away the Easter that should be. It's not fair. The heart cries, all of this, all the change, all the loss, the staying home, the looming fear, the masks, the death. If ever we needed Easter, it's now. Now, with homes and hearts besieged with anxiety. We need anticipation and hope and a day being what it ought to be. We need promises of a new life. We need death to be broken. We need hugs. We need music and lilies. There's a picture we hold in our heads," she writes, "of life as it should be. If all were right, if life were fair, it would be like such and such. The sun would shine, our jobs would be secure, our parents and our children would be safe, our hams would never burn, our lilies would smell like resurrection. It's not like such and such for most of us now. Not when the world is topsy-turvy and the rules have all changed. There's always instability to a greater or lesser degree. Fear and anxiety are always lurking, ready to jump into our lives whenever there's a hole to fill. Days are gloomy. Times are tough. Projects and people are imperfect. We need hope today," writes Julie Riddle in the Alpena News. "And we need it every day. We need reassurance in this troubled time, and we need it in every other time too. During tough days ahead, as now, as in all tough days in the past, there has been, there is, and there will be hope. Reassurance. A place to lean. The whole of humanity," she says, "is still extending a hand to which to cling. When the sun shines, when it rains. I know that my Redeemer lives. I know that I'm not alone, even when times are tough. I know that someone loves me enough to die for me, even though I am far from perfect." Everything is different, writes Julie Riddle, but nothing has changed. Alleluia. Yes, it does feel like everything has changed, doesn't it? Since the shutdown of our economy and the necessary isolation of people during this social distancing period. We miss handshakes. We miss eating out. We miss face-to-face conversations, and we regret having to resort instead to virtual contact over Facebook and internet emails and Skyping and Zoom meetings. I find it tedious. I find it unreal, this virtual worship. Virtual reality. I prefer real reality. However, inasmuch as there are no other options until the government guidelines are lifted and the fear of the pandemic plague has passed, we have to turn to other media for our messages, or to find meaning. The medium of the newspaper columnists, like Julie Riddle and others, and blogs and news feeds that are captured on computer, they become our dialogue partners in this new stay-at-home, isolation-inducing social setting. One of my friends recently sent me a short essay, and he asked for my feedback. Now, this author is a well-traveled, well-educated, faithful man whom I hold in very high regard. His musings help point me to the topic that I intend to address in this morning's sermon. How do we know what God's will is when we're in the midst of suffering and chaos? The friend who wrote to me is the Reverend Kit Wilkie, a former minister of the United Church of Christ congregation in Lakewood, California. Kit was our neighbor in Long Beach, and we did many an event together. We did youth camps at Pilgrim Pines. We did interfaith services. Kit produced some of the PowerPoint songs that we use here for Underground Church. His dad, Harold Wilkie, had also been a minister too, even though Harold Wilkie had been born without arms. He took Kit to hear the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on the Washington Mall when he delivered the I Have a Dream speech. Kit was there, and Reverend Wilkie, his father, was present when the Americans with Disabilities Act was signed into law. The Wilkies are a great UCC family. My friend, Kit Wilkie, a social activist minister, a compassionate pastor, had to take early retirement when he became disabled by a mugger who beat him savagely. Despite some brain damage and other physical disabilities, Kit Wilkie still has a brilliant theological mind, and he has been writing from his home. I recently received this from Kit Wilkie, and I quote his words. What I have been trying to write about for the last 2+ years is the conversion of our culture from one where our rules and definitions about a complete, unchangeable reality given to us by God, a culture in which people tend to believe that God's laws are set and immutable, to a more fluid, potentially changeable reality based on the inclusion of a variety of viewpoints, individual experiences, all tested through repetition and the process of science. Kit realizes that the rules and the definitions and the names of our reality are handed down, and then he says cast in stone, based on the stories that we tell in places like the Bible or the Quran about a complete, unchangeable reality given to us by God. He points out in his essay, for example, 5 of the 6 Supreme Court justices who are Catholic, he looks at them as people who believe that God's laws are set and immutable. Now, if he's going to contradict ideas like that among people who wield considerable political power in America, that's not going to be an easy thing for Kit Wilkie. He hopes that, and I quote him again, as we include a variety of viewpoints and individual experiences, our worldview will be continually redefined, and in the process, it'll become less chaotic and somewhat less dangerous as it becomes more inclusive of a variety of perspectives, and each perspective is tested by science. And I think this would be a very nice outcome. Ultimately, writes Kit, this rests on the profound belief that you can get closer to reality because the chaos of reality is itself God. Did you hear that? This is a profound proposition. The chaos of reality is itself God. Live with that idea a while. Kit goes on to say, we can approach the understanding we make of the chaos because, dangerous and deadly as that chaos appears, it is that chaos which created us and loves us. See, the second proposal, that it is the chaos that created us and loves us, is almost as hard to grasp as his first proposition that the chaos of reality is itself God. But you know, it makes sense as a syllogism, because Kit then concludes, God is the reality that loves us. Part of the reason that Christ's crucifixion and Christian martyrdom are so important, writes Reverend Wilkie, is that even when our current formulation of the chaos chooses to kill us, God is still the reality that loves us enough that we can trust God and dare to seek deeper understanding. Whew! Unquote. Kit encourages us in this time of uncertainty, in this time of fear and chaos, in this time of social isolation and financial freefall, to embrace the chaos, even the deadly and dangerous parts of it, because it is that chaos which created us and loves us, because the chaos of reality is itself God. Kit's bold response to the question that I raised in my sermon title, how do we know what's God's will when someone is suffering? In effect, he says, embrace the chaos. Even the deadly and the dangerous parts of it, embrace it, because it is that chaos that created us and loves us, because the chaos of reality is itself God. This novel theological approach deserves some consideration. Can we embrace the chaos, trusting that God loves us through it all? Let me let you in on why I think this topic concerns me so much. The question about God's presence or absence in times of suffering began for me in earnest in the spring of 1990, when I preached the funeral for a senior high student member of my church, a handsome surfer dude in high school who hanged himself at home. Somehow I had to find words of comfort